The past haunts us all, whether it be a person, place, or thing. We are reluctant to let go. We call to the dead out of desperation and intrigue, searching for answers about what lies behind the shadows. We are paranormal researchers. We are Necromancers. Hello, and welcome to the Necromancer Live Show. I am your host, Justin Brown, and welcome to episode 46 with Joye Pugh. Okay, before we get her onto the show and introduce her, we're going to bring over our chat moderator, Jessica Bias, this evening. What's up, Jess? Say hi.
Hello.
All right, folks, you know the drill. If you are a casual or a normal viewer of the show, you put your comments and your questions down for our guest or for us down in the comments section below this video, and we will periodically check in with you and, get those questions to our guests. So, are you excited for tonight's guest tonight, Jessica?
Absolutely.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. All right, like I said, guys, put all your comments and questions down, and we'll get back to you, and Jessica will address them. And I will get right back to you, Jess.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. I am very excited to interview different types of guests for this show. I'm using a different service provider to help me find different types of guests, so I'm going to provide you with that tonight, okay? After having a supernatural dream at age 6 about the end of time, Joy's 40 years of research into that dream has allowed her to tell the world what she believes is about to happen in our generation, and tells about this prophecy in her books, Beguiled Eden to Armageddon, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Joy's work also involves the spirit world, the pineal gland, UFOs, cattle mutilation, demonology, and more. Okay? So, without further ado, we're going to bring Joy over, and we're going to have a little paranormal chat with her. What's up, Joy? How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me on your show tonight. I'm looking really forward to it.
Thank you for coming on. It's very exciting to meet people that are not only authors and, putting their own work out there. You learn so much from talking to a wide spectrum of people, not only in the paranormal world, but, in theology and things that all kind of intersect and tie in together. So I'm hoping to learn from you, and maybe, our viewers and followers will cross into each other and they can enjoy both of our work. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, Joy, let's start off the show how I always started off, okay? You have it set up in your bio. You have this dream, right? Why don't you walk us through this dream, tell us about it, and all the events that has transpired until now, and see where it takes us.
Well, I think that probably the reason that I do the work that I do was set up a long time ago from that dream that I had when I was 6 years old. And it's a dream that if anyone ever has a supernatural dream, you always remember it. It's almost like it's the same thing every day, almost like you took a picture of it and you can close your eyes and you can recall every last detail of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it happened to me, I had gone to sleep one night, just like a normal 6-year-old child would go to sleep. And then after I was asleep for some time, I had what I really believe was more of a visionary dream than it was just to say I was dreaming about something, because it's almost too real. And at that age, having not seen movies and things that would make you have some understanding, like the movie Armageddon or something like that. Unfortunately, my age, I go back to the time of, Disney and things like that. We didn't have really tough, hard movies and things to affect your dreams at night. So
Right.
Anyway, it was very unusual for me to have had something like this. But in the dream, I encounter something that seems absolutely, totally destructive. And I am absolutely standing on this hill, and all before me is total destruction. And I'm talking about in the eyes of a 6-year-old, it was devastating. It was beyond actual words, because what I saw was the destruction of not only just close to me, but like forever and ever and ever, just endlessly. And the sky was darkened, but there was a magenta, kind of orangey color that was left over. But the thing that was most, I guess, horrifying was that there was no sound. That literally, what we would say, where you could hear yourself breathe or anything, it was absolutely like it had been totally destroyed. There was nothing, no wind, nothing, just total destruction. And of course, being a child like that, it would, I looked around and I'm like, where is everyone? And why am I the only person left here to see this? It was absolutely mind-boggling as to the destruction and what had happened. So when I turned to look and try to see if there was anyone else that I could find, the only thing that I saw was a part of a wall that kind of was jagged up, up like this, and it went on up a little bit higher than I was at my height in this dream. And because of the severeness of what was happening and what I was literally seeing, I thought that's the only shelter that's left. That's the only thing that's left. And so I went running toward it. And when I got to it to try to go behind it, there was this being standing there looking over the top, out over that, down onto this huge plain of destruction. And I immediately looked at him, hoping, help me. I mean, no one can even understand what a 6-year-old would have thought, seeing what I saw. And when he turned to look at me, his eyes were absolutely the most blue. I mean, they were just blue, blue, blue. And he was standing in a kind of a white looking robe, and he had this band that looked kind of like maybe goldish looking around his waist. And I was just scared to death, literally. And when he looked at me, he started talking about, "You are not alone, I am with you always." And when he did, it was like this moment of that he literally saw my fear and what I had beheld. And that with that comment, it was like, I'm here. This is all okay. It's going to be okay. And of course, the release of, oh my goodness, this is like the worst thing ever. But yet this being, you can't take your eyes off him because he's just larger than life, so real, so perfect. And immediately, when he started talking to me, I literally knew that was Jesus standing before me. And at 6 years of age. And I woke up. So I get up out of the bed. I go running down the hall to my grandparents' room, which was right down past the bathroom. We lived with my grandparents. And I woke my grandmother up because she was the person who was instrumental in starting me to Sunday school and church the first week after I was born. And I was like, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." And she was like, "What in the world?" And I was just frantic. "I've got to go to the church right now." I mean, this is a 6-year-old kid waking her up going, "I've got to go to the church right now." I literally thought that what I had seen was about to happen to this whole world. And so she's trying to calm me down. And of course, I'm like just beyond myself. And so when she finally gets me to calm down enough to try to tell her, she says, "Oh, well, it's just a dream. Take a deep breath, take a breath." Well, I couldn't let it go. And she finally took me back to the bed. She finally, sat down with me and tried to comfort me. And I just keep saying, "We need to go to the church, we need to go to the church." So she finally made me feel better by saying she would take me there the next day. And from that point on, I couldn't let go of it. It was like, it was this thing that had happened. I had seen it. I didn't understand about it, but I knew how significant it was. Because I'd not seen colors like that. I'd not ever seen destruction like that. I'd never seen anything like that. I had maybe an impression of maybe what God might look like at 6 years old, and that would be like sitting on a throne maybe or something. but not a man standing and literally having this compassionate look and what he looked like. So as the years went on, and I began asking questions about these things that I'd seen, I'd go to pastors and they would look at me and go, well, I don't really know how to explain that, Joy. So it bothered me. And when I became, I guess, around 12 or 13 years of age, I really started reading the book of Revelation for myself. And all of a sudden, I started seeing, when I would read the book of Revelation, I could see those things as they were in this dream. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this. I've seen what was going to happen with all of this. And I was in a drugstore with my mother. And back in the day, this tells my age, there was like books were on like a little spin thing inside the Rexall drugstore. And I was spinning the books around because I was always an avid reader. And there was this book by Hal Lindsey. It's called The Great Lake Planet Earth. And I was just frantic to my mother when I picked it up. And I looked at the cover and what it was saying. And I started flipping through the pages. And I'm like, my goodness, somebody understands what this has been eating me alive since I've been 6 years old. Is going, what's going to happen. Mm. So I was begging my mother. She's like, what kind of book is it? And she's used to taking me to the library all the time. But I was like, I just got to have this book. So she finally gave in and bought it for me. Well, I went home and I literally read that book. 12 years or 13 years of age. I mean, all night. I was up all night with it. Because it really, really opened that door to me to know that what I had seen was just not a dream. It was not something just to bypass or not be concerned about. It was absolutely something very real. Mm-hmm. And so at that point in time, I decided that when I couldn't find answers to a lot of these kinds of questions, when people have prophetic dreams or have prophetic things that happen to them, or people see visions, or people see what they believe are ghosts or apparitions, UFOs, all these kind of things, instead of me turning my back on that kind of thing, I maintained that I'm a Christian and I wanted to know the entire truth about everything. But I felt like the Bible was going to answer some of those questions. And so when I started working in school, after I got out of high school, I wrote several papers in regard to these kinds of things. But when I got in college, I had several professors that I could ask, instead of doing, let's say, something that I was studying, they would allow me to do something like this. How does light affect the alpha and omega of the end, beginning and end? As long as I could bring information to the table, defend it, find supporting data, then, if I was willing to take the chance that my grade would be based on that, with a chance that I might fail, then they would be willing to let me try it. So I had a couple of people through that all the way through my doctoral degree. When I was working on my doctorate, I had a wonderful professor that was from out in California. And I wanted to expand upon the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end, and how light had a connection to it. And so he allowed me to do that. So that started a basis of me being able to start writing and putting things down in perspective as what was happening. But the thing that really solidified everything that I had thought about all through these years was that back in maybe around 1970, 75, somewhere in there, my dad brought home a Life and Look, either Life or a Look magazine. He was a very avid historian himself, and was always bringing books into our home that really allowed me to do a lot of research. And he showed me a picture that literally changed my life. He walked in, he said, Joy, you ever thought about what Jesus looked like? And I was like, well, in my mind, yes, I've seen what I believe he looked like when I was 6 years old. And so he said, well, there may be a way for us to know that what he looked like. And so I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, take a look at this. And what it was an article that had been done on the Shroud of Turin. And of course, it's in Turin, Italy, but it's the Holy Shroud that supposedly wrapped Jesus Christ's body after he was crucified and he was placed into the tomb. and then rose on the third day. So I immediately grabbed a hold of the book and I looked at this picture that had been made through a negative, and it was the same person I had seen in my dream. And I just began crying, and my dad's like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "I've seen this man. This is the man. This is the man." I just kept, I just got really excited about it. It still gives me chill bumps to think about it, because it was so instrumental in proving to me that what I thought and what I had been doing research on was really, in fact, the truth, and that it was real, and it wasn't fake, and it wasn't some dream. It wasn't something that I had made up, or that something may have triggered a dream like that. But again, I never could figure how my mind at 6 years of age could have seen and known anything like that, because I was raised as a very sheltered child. I went to church. I joined the church when I was 11 years old. I was baptized then. Um, of course, I was able to enjoy music and things of that nature. But I was born, on a little South Georgia farm, and so you're being exposed to anything was very difficult, because we could get one TV station, and that was a Channel 10 out of Albany, Georgia. And then
Wow.
sometimes on a good day, if we could rotate the antenna around, we might get Channel 6. So the chances of me ever seeing anything like people have access to today was impossible.
Right.
So that's what led me to begin writing my books, because I began to see that whatever this was has been a play in my life the entire time. So now for 40 years, I've been doing a lot of research.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all the research you have done over your career. I have a quick question. I'm very curious about what ethnic race Jesus appeared to you. Was he just straight Caucasian, or did he seem, Jewish? Did he look like he was a Middle Eastern type, race in your dream?
Well, we've seen so many times people have tried to make him into what you would call a Khazarian looking person.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not have the hook nose. He did not have the curly hair. He really looked, if you take a look at the Strata Turin, he looked identical to that. His eyes were blue. His eyes were blue. And I am telling you, blue. And his hair was kind of a dishwater, what I would say dishwater blonde color. And it was about shoulder length. And it kind of had like it was waveness in it. It was not coarse. It was not, frizzy. It was more wave. And really, like when I saw the shroud, I mean, it was just identical. And to the point that I was like I say, it really just blew my mind, because it's kind of like, you've seen and you know that when you've run into somebody, you see somebody somewhere, and then later on you run into them somewhere else, you go, how do I know that person? But I've seen them before. And
Right.
that was the feeling immediately. I didn't have to even think. It was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, he has more of what I call the true Hebraic Israelite, um, Sephardic Jew, not the what we call the Khazarian, dark
Mm-hmm.
skin, hook nose. And
Okay.
I've seen both on the History Channel, because I was on the History Channel for several of the Nostradamus prophecies, especially about the end of days and the seven seals. I filmed several episodes with them on my work. And a lot of people have tried to believe that he was of that Khazarian, and the hook nose, and the black, kinky, more hair, where there he wasn't. He looks identical to that shroud. And like I say, the skin tone was not what I would say looked like somebody had never been out in the sun, but he looked like somebody that would have had a typical tan to me.
Very,
His
very,
hands,
very interesting.
body covered, but his hands and his facial features, down to where this tunic thing or whatever it was that he was covered in, he would have looked more tan looking than he would say, let's say, dark skinned or anything like that.
Very interesting. Before I get into some more questions and get into your book and research, Jess, do you want to read off Derek's question?
Absolutely. He had two of them. He said, how does Joy go about logging her dreams? And how often does she have these occurrences?
I didn't tell me the first thing again. I didn't quite understand.
Okay, he wants to know how do you go about logging your dreams, and how often do you have them?
Okay, in other words, he's wanting to know that if I have kept records of dreams over the years. Is that what he's
Yes,
asking?
yes.
Um, well, over my course of years that I have had dreams, unfortunately, I've had dreams where, I dreamed something was going to happen and it did. I would dream deaths of people. As a child, that's very scary. To go to sleep and dream that somebody is dying, and you dream how it's happening and where it's happening. And when you wake up, the telephone rings to tell your family that so and so has just died, and they have just died like this. That was very unnerving as a child.
Sure.
And I had several of those things happen to family members who lived at a distance or friends who lived at a distance. And so, not every time did I have dreams that were terrible, that something really terrible happened. But at the same time, I had dreams of things that people were not sick. There was no reason for me to be dreaming about them. And then all of a sudden, these terrible things happen. And I've had premonitions the same way, where I would be with someone and I could almost feel that something was about to occur. And immediately, right before it would happen, I would literally get this feeling that I knew what was about to happen and it would happen. Those kind of those kind of things you have to take a deep breath and learn to deal with. Discernment is something that is important when you go through something like this, because you've got to be able to compete with your own mind, because at the same time you're going, how is this happening, that you can literally feel something and know something before it happens. And there's no way for me to really to describe it, because it's not something that I had heard about or knew about that made me think those things. Just like this dream, I had not had anything that I could go back and say I'd ever seen anything like that. So as far as logging them, I've never chronologically went through and just, logged things down. But, I have shared over the course of many, many years about those kinds of things that have occurred to me, especially in counseling situations, because I counsel a lot of people and I talk to a lot of people, research things with a lot of people. And it seems that people are so scared to discuss this stuff. And there's where the paranormal is getting a bad rap. Even with the Bible is literally the most paranormal book that's ever been written. And people don't stop to think about how paranormal it is. So because I guess I've had these things happen to me, I'm more open to listen to what has happened to you without being condemning you or making you feel like something terrible wrong with you. So, those kind of things have happened. I probably eventually will probably write stories about those particular things. In my book that's out right now, let me show you, that's called Parables of Joy on a Georgia Farm, that's just come out. This is the cover of it. And in this book, I do talk about the dream that we just talked about, and I also talk about a family member, a distant relative, two of them that are actually three of them that were murdered, and how they were murdered, and how I had already told my family about what had happened. And so that's in there as well. And there's things about my childhood that would really help people if they're going through difficult times. There's victories, there's sadness, there's all these things that do occur in your life that lead you to become who you are. So I had a lot of people who wanted to know, why do you write all this? Who are you? Are you a person that I can trust? Have you had experiences maybe like I've had? When I put this together, it was the intent for you to get to know me on a personal level. And I really exposed myself. I mean, I really, it's all true. The names are true. The people are true. And the things that happen here are very true. So, like I say, this book has just come out. And if you're interested in knowing more about me and my life and what it was like, so that you get an understanding when you do read my research, how it is important to me not to fool myself. If I'm going to do research, I'm going to do research to find the answer, whether or not it's something I agree with. And many times, unfortunately, what I had been told or had been led to believe in my lifetime, once I did the research, then I found something totally different. So I'm open to, what's out there and what's been done. The main thing is to know the truth, because if you know the truth and you're on the foundation of the truth, that truth will set you free.
Wow. Jess, did Derek have any other questions there?
Yes. Yes, he wanted to know if you ever use a sketch artist to prove your imaginary of what you dreamt of.
I've really thought that would be a fun thing to do if I had someone that had the ability to paint and could tell them maybe the similarity of colors. I don't know that I've ever seen a color that's so similar to the colors that I actually saw. And that is something that when I've done research with people who have had near-death experiences and they actually encounter heavenly places or they encounter hell, the colors that they describe are so much more brilliant. And if I could say anything about what I saw, the brilliance, you could almost feel it. It was so destructive. You could almost feel it. So it would be fun to me to have someone that had a kind of a vision and could work with me until maybe they could get those colors exactly right. But it would be the most horrific thing that you've ever witnessed if we could get it on paper. It really would.
Yeah. Okay. C-Town had a question, or liked your insight in it. What would I like to know is how come everyone that has some sort of empathy or clairvoyance, it usually hits them or comes out between the ages of 6 or 10 with mostly anybody, anyone. Do you have any insight on why that is?
I truly believe that as children, we are more receptive. In other words, we haven't had our mind so set up to believe that we can't do this, we can't believe in that, so rigid. And sometimes I think that when we get to be adults and we have these things happen to them or happen to us or whatever, we just push it aside. Oh, it's just a dream. Oh, it was just so and so. Oh, it was just a coincidence. Oh, I was just lucky. Children don't see it that way. It's the first time you've encountered something. It's interesting. It's like you're paying attention to it. I really believe that may be the reason that Scripture actually tells us that you are to come to the Father as a childlike person, because a child is loving, caring, understanding. It's usually they don't have any hate, so their mind is open. And I always say that a child's mind is like a sponge, and that's what worries me about today's world, is that we're throwing so much at a 6-year-old today. I mean, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more things are thrown at a child that age today than I ever encountered. Life was slower, it was easier. Never did we see things like like people even have on TV today. I mean, you hardly ever saw anybody kiss somebody, much less talk about kissing, things like that. So I think a child's mind is just more open and not afraid. And the same thing with near-death experiences. When I have interviewed children, they'll just tell you like it is. They don't feel like that I'm going to go, well, let's call the paddy wagon and put you in a white little cape and send you off to La Land somewhere. Give you a couple of hard drugs to let you not remember this. If you get an adult to finally tell you about it, it's always like, oh, can I come talk to you? I need to do it, and I don't need anybody to know. And it's really bad. And I know that you're going to probably think I'm crazy. They will go through that for 10 minutes in a counseling session, and I'm going, there is absolutely nothing that you could tell me that I have not heard, seen, or had happen to myself. So just sit back, take your cup of coffee, and just tell me about what happened and relax. And don't feel like I'm sitting here judging you. I want you to be so open that you will tell me the colors, what was said, what you saw, and what happened. Once I can make an adult relax like that, they're like a child, because they're like, oh my gosh, I want to know what this is, why this happened, and I want to know how it happened, and why did it happen to me, and what does this mean for me? And once you get them to do that, most times it will open up something in their life that maybe has been a root of a problem or whatever, that they just become a whole different person. The biggest thing is that where they were skeptical, they become believers in the spiritual world. And I think that's the important key, because even you have Christians who don't really stop and think that the Spirit of God is a paranormal thing. When Jesus healed people, there was miraculous stuff. One of the first things he did was he cast demons out of a human being. And those demons absolutely talked to Jesus, and Jesus talked back to them, and they were smart enough to know, wondering, had he come before the time? So if we say there's no such thing as the spirit world, if we say there's no such thing as demonic activity, if we say there's no such thing as miraculous things like parting the Red Sea, if we say that there's no way that somebody could be raised from the dead, we're wrong. The Bible literally proves that. And that's what I'm saying, that if you really want to read the most paranormal book out there, the Bible is that. And so paranormal work is very important. I know a lot of people sometimes will say, well, Joy, why is it you will go on a paranormal show? And I'm like, look at what the Bible's telling us. We have an ability to understand that we are all filled with a spirit being. And that spirit being doesn't die when our flesh dies here. And my books have been to scientifically prove that what the Bible has been saying all along is correct. Because when you can give somebody tangible evidence, then they're more apt to see it. No different than, when Jesus died and rose again, he had a disciple who was like, I'm not going to believe it till I see him. I see the piercing, in him. And then once he did, there was no doubt. And I will always say that the greatest proof that Jesus Christ rose from the dead and came through that shrouded friend and to live again is that his disciples all died as martyrs. I'm talking about terrible deaths. I'm talking about being boiled in oil, heads cut off, crucified upside down, the worst of the worst. The only one that didn't have to do that was John the Revelator. And he had been boiled in oil, and he'd also been on the Isle of Patmos for all those years in prison before he was released to die as an old man. Jesus actually prophesied that would happen, and that is what happened. But every other one of them died tragic deaths. If you and I were putting on a hoax to people, and you died on a cross, and I watched you die, there is no way that I would say, I believe that you rose again for somebody to kill me in a manner and fashion that those people died in. So to me, they are the greatest testimony that he lived after he was crucified and that they physically saw him. If you saw that, then you would have no doubt. It's no different than the people who I have researched with in their case studies of near-death experiences. Some of these people were living their lives, and I mean, they were blowing hell wide open. They literally, when they had this near-death experience and they saw what hell looked like, their lives are so changed today that they do not ever want to end up in hell for what they saw. And at the same time, people who were Christians or good people that have had these near-death experiences, what it has done to them is that they no longer now have any fear of death. So when you think about those martyring the disciples and their willingness to die such tragic, evil, terrible deaths, they knew that they would raise again. They knew that there was life on the other side. And if we don't embrace that and try to, and I know that that's what you all are trying to do with your show, you're trying to find those things that are scientific that will be able to prove that what you are researching is real, that it's not a conspiracy, that it's not fake news, that there is something among us that we can't see. And, and I try to look at this in all of my books. When you take light, and our eyes can only envision, let's say the spectrum of light is so big, but our eyes can only see in the spectrum of light about like this. Then that means anything that's on either side of this, if the light is bent in any way, and we're locked into this, that anything that's on the other side is in existence, but it can be right in your face and you could not see it. And so when they started scientifically proving this, I'm like, okay, then you can't see beyond the veil. But there are some people who have, with their pineal glands, been able to see through that veil and have experience. The Bible talks about even John going to the third heaven. There are things that there were people, Elisha and Elijah in the Bible, who could see this other world. The Bible tells us we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities in high places. So that's telling us there is an entity or entities here, which we know because when Jesus encountered them, he called them out. They came out of the person. They talked to him. He talked to them. They knew he was the Son of God. So we can't say this, that like you're researching and what I'm researching, it's not real. We have proof of it. The problem is science is so guarded about having to have a piece of it. And when you talk about the spiritual world, you're talking about something that literally is not in the physical realm of what our eyes can behold. But we can show that, for example, until the day that we had a telescope, we could see that there were certain planets and stars up there. But with a Hubble telescope, what do we see? The entire night sky is just a mass of light. How would you have believed that if you had not seen it? The same thing, we did not know what the microscopic world looked like. So when we learn to do microscopes, and then you start looking at things that's growing on our hands, that's growing on our face, there's dust mites that you can't even see with your own eyes. These are horrific things, bacteria and viruses. But if you didn't believe in that, when you saw it under the microscope, you can't discredit it. So it is an ongoing process of my work to try to prove that the spiritual realm is right here with us. It's engaged with us. It has been here with us since the Garden of Eden. And my work is to prove that that has been going on all this time in the things that people encounter, whether it's strange lights in the sky, alien abduction, cattle mutilations. I have seen it all. And it's not fake. I realize that there are crop circles that people go out and make, but there's crop circles that are done where the nodes are blown open, that there's something involved magnetically with it. The same thing with UFOs. These craft are not run by a normal jet engine system. They're using something else. Demonic entities are very real. I have cases of studies of all these kinds of things that people have seen. Most of the time when they encounter these demonic beings, there will be a sulfuric smell to them. So, when we think about the number of UFOs that we have, that the military, that airline pilots, credible people like myself who are trying to study this and do it from a scientific standpoint, that, there's so many of those things that come out of the volcanoes. And then there's so many of them that come out of the oceans. I mean, our oceans are something that we don't really truly understand, almost not even as much as we understand from here to the moon. So to me, when we try to push paranormal away, I think it's to keep us from knowing the truth. And I believe that when the Bible told us that there is something among us, and Jesus called it wheat and tares, he said they're like us, but not of us. There is an entity here to keep us so dumbed down and so unable to prove it that we sometimes will lose our very soul to something that just wants to destroy us. And so that is my hope, that once you open the door to be able to connect the science in with biblical teachings and proving that these things are very real, that you're starting to get some credible science to justify that there is something ongoing that's around us that we don't just all the time see. I think it's very interesting that the calendar where they use the hydrogen atoms and then they try to pierce the sky, that we saw like a swirl. And my concern is, do we run into a dome? Do we run into something in the sky that we can't break through? There's all the questions I'm sure you know about whether we went to the moon. Can we go through these Van Allen belts? Could film have survived when you couldn't put regular Polaroid film on an airline and have it x-rayed because it would destroy it years ago? There's all these things that seem to have not been given to us as truth. And I encountered a lot of that when I was doing research about things like Egypt and the pharaohs. The pharaohs had long, huge skulls, and they would justify it by saying they took boards and mashed the skull and made it that way. But these things were serpentine. Their heads were made like that. They were different. And now that we're getting to the point that we have archaeologists out there that can uncover this stuff before somebody can ship it off to the Smithsonian or to the bottom of the Vatican or to the British Museum, we get to see it now. Where before, something that they could not justify or they did not want us to know about, they hid from us. And I'm going to tell you, the amount of stuff that is hid in those three places, in the Smithsonian, the Vatican, and the British Museum, would rock your mind. And why is it they won't let the normal person into those places to do that research? I mean, you have to have so much credibility to get into those kinds of things and connections that tells you there's a lot more going on than what people are willing to acknowledge to us.
Wow, that is a lot to think about. We don't have much time left. Let me ask you a few questions and try to keep your response as short as possible. Okay. Now, you still attend a religious community like church, correct?
I do, and I'm one that I try to travel around to churches, different denominations, because I enjoy understanding how different denominations came up with the different ideas that they have about their beliefs.
Right.
So while I'm a Southern Baptist, I still, do travel and listen to other religious things.
Okay. What is your take on the way most mainstream dogmas out there? It doesn't have to be in one particular. Why is the paranormal so shunned in that type of setting in churches and in the community at large, especially on the right and conservative community? Why do you think that is? I know you spoke a little bit about why, things are hidden from us for whatever reason. Why do you think the church in general does do that?
Well, I have a lot of concern about the connection to the secret societies. A lot of foundations were laid by the Freemasons.
Mm-hmm.
And Freemasons are one of those secret organizations that I believe have been a part of the culprit of things happening in this world and how things are hidden from the true people. A lot of those people end up being deacons. I really do believe that there's been a conspiracy to keep the normal, what I call common man, from knowing the truth about all these things. And then these elite people that I believe are part of what my book's called the serpent lineage have been the controllers that manipulate humanity. And all the religions in some form or facet have had things that were put in place by those kinds of people. So it is something to be very cautious about. Paganism is one of those things where, I trace it back to the Garden of Eden. And so it's real important that when people start reading my work, that I've got two lineages coming out of Eden that fight all the way to the end of days. And it's traced, I trace it all the way to the end of days.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to UFOs, do you subscribe to the idea of the ancient astronaut theory, where UFOs, aliens, are pretty much the divine beings that ushered us and our species on this planet? Are they the birth of our creation? Do you believe that?
They are, there's no doubt in my mind that that is the fallen angels. And that the fallen angels, when they came upon the daughters of man before Noah's flood, and they produced giants. And those giants, even if you go back and you look at scriptural stuff, if you go back and look at Sumerian cuneiform text about some of the things like Gilgamesh, you find that when they died, these beings or these things died, their spirits were not like you and I, because they were not initially created by God through Adam and Eve. It was an offset of Adam and Eve and the serpent, and that's why the curse was against Eve's seed versus Adam's seed. Saying that means that these demonic beings have been with us a long time because they could not die. Those giants were searching for something to keep their flesh alive, and I show through my work how these secret societies that are part of that have worked just diligently trying to figure out how to keep flesh alive. Because if you understand demonic possession, it can possess you and live within your body. So they need bodies to live inside of. The problem is that in exorcism, a priest can remove that. And if you want it to be removed, it can be removed. Malachi Martin did a great book called Hostage to the Devil that some of my research is from, that literally proves that those things are real. And again, the same thing happened when Jesus cast out the demons, the first miracle that he did in the Bible.
So, based on what you just said, demonic entities and energies need our bodies, right?
They need flesh to survive in.
Without us,
and
they would die, or
when they're not in flesh, when they're not possessing you, then you're going to see them be like what people believe are these little entities about so big, 3 foot, and they look grayish looking, and they all look the same. The fact is that they can materialize in your bedroom, or go through a window, or come through a wall. So you can see that if something can materialize here and then go through a wall, that it cannot be something that would be solid like us. Now, because I have seen a UFO case that I actually saw myself, that's documented with MUFON, is that there was these 2 triangular kind of things that came from the other. The first one I saw was sitting on the horizon, and it was moving around, and then all of a sudden it literally had an arc. In other words, this thing was like this, and it arced out a light that looked like it was in a tube of light in an arc. It went back and forth 3 times. Okay? On the 3rd time, when it did it out, it formed another thing identical to the first one. And the light within it went back into it, and there was 2 crafts that flew all over the sky. I contacted the Air Force base that's near me, including the airport that's near me. We tried our best to figure out what those things were. and they were silent craft. They flew beyond their words. I mean, I was able to watch this stuff for a long time. And because I've always looked at everything as a scientific, I was looking at height, wind speed, everything from a science standpoint, trying to figure out what it was. And I had several people come and film where it had happened and what it was like and that kind of thing. But there's no doubt in mind it's real. And if something could literally be here and use some type of light, because it's pure looking white light, and form something else, it actually made itself and then it disconnected itself. If that's the case, it was identical. The beings that most people see, the little small 3-foot beings, they're all identical. They all look alike. And the fact that they can go through and do different things tells me that, again, we're dealing with something that's in the spiritual world. Jesus walked on the water. Peter, when he saw Jesus walk on the water, Jesus didn't say, "Don't get out of that boat, Peter, you're going to fall and sink." He didn't tell him not to do that, because Peter, when he got out of the boat, was walking on the water. When he took his eyes off of Jesus, only then, in fear of the storm, did he start sinking. So if Peter could walk on water, then there's something about us that could do the same thing.
Very interesting. I regret to tell you that we only have a few minutes left of this show. I would love to sit here and ask you questions all night long, but unfortunately we can't do that. So let's use the remaining time to let the viewers know about your books, where to get them, and where to follow your work.
Yes, you can go to my website, and it's www.drjoye, and it's DRJOYE, joy with an E.com. And then my Facebook page is Joye, Joye, Pugh, Pugh. And you can find out most everything about me on that. My books are all listed on my website. My first book is available in the 2017 edition. It's Antichrist, the clone interviews Jesus Christ. I showed you the Parables book. The latest is my 2-volume edition of Eden that's just come out, that just got finished just a couple of months ago. And it's a 2-volume edition. This book was the #1 bestseller on Amazon. And now this has all been updated into, it actually took 2 books instead of 1. This one is the biggest, the first one. And so you can see how much bigger all of this information got. And then my trilogy that I highly recommend to people who are interested in the spiritual realm is the Beguiled Eden to Armageddon, Volume 1. And this is Volume 2. And this is Volume 3. And they're all of this is available at my website. There is also an audio Eden that was of my original work. That's 12 CD disc if you want to listen to it. And also I have an album of my original music that I wrote. It's called Before Time Stops. It's also available at my website. So if they've got any questions, there's also a little thing there. If you've got a question you wanted to ask tonight, if you'll go to my website, it will give you a chance to email me. And I get emails from all over the world. I do case studies from all over the world. So I would love to hear from you if you had a question you wanted to ask and we didn't get to it tonight.
I hope they do, Joy. I'm sure there is dozens of questions to ask. I mean, your books look great. I love the graphics. You seem very passionate and very driven, and I love to see people put, their life's work into what they believe and they're passionate about. That's what I want to do, and I love to see people do that. It's very fulfilling to see people able to do that and not just stuck in some, job that just, doesn't make them happy, doesn't make them feel like they're fulfilling their purpose on this planet. So I'm glad to see that you're doing great in that. And I hope I have an opportunity to at least listen to one of your books on audio, because it seems a lot of the things in theology that I research seem interesting, but not just interesting. There's a gut feeling I have that there's something important, significant, whether your faith is very strong or not. There's something very significant in how it applies to our culture and just everything about the whole story of everything. So I hope to learn more, and maybe I will learn it from you, Joy. So with that being said,
Well, I hope and pray you something to make you think, because that's what I do is I teach, and I want to teach people to start looking for these answers, because when you look for them and you seriously look for them, you will find those answers. And I hope that maybe later on, when you have a chance to read some more of my work, that you'll have me back on and we can do a show on just one of the books, and take some really deep topics and go down into some serious research about each one of those topics.
I'm probably going to have to make it more than an hour long. This is not a subject matter. Yeah, this is not a subject matter you can tackle in an hour, and I have found that out.
Well, if I wrote about one thing, it would be different. But as you know, the paranormal gets into so many things. And so I try to tie it all together with all the sciences so that you have an understanding of the broader picture and not just one area.
Right. I am very interested in how science has been struggling to intersect, the paranormal, religion, spirituality, and metaphysics in, with the materialism that's been out there since, Einstein and on. They've been struggling to do that with the quantum physics research that's, started 100 years till now. It's all suggesting things that, theologians and spirituals have been putting out there already. So they're coming around, yeah. Right? They're finally coming around. They're developing experimental science to actually prove, like you said, some things are what has been in our society and our teachings for many years.
I just believe that the science will actually, in the end, will prove what we've already felt was correct. We just got to get just a little bit more to prove those kinds of things. But like I say, in the work and all these books that I've done, that's what I do. I try to show what has been said and scientifically what is out there that proves it. And like I say, once you get that understanding, it just opens your mind. It gives you, I guess, if anything, it lets you know that we are not just a grain of sand floating around in space in a big bang. Everything has a rhyme and a reason. And once you do the research and you read my research, you'll never feel like you're just nobody. You will find that there's a reason that you are here at this time, at this moment.
Wonderful. Thank you for being on the show, Joy. You've been a pleasure to talk to and a real treat. Guys, check her website out at least and see what kind of books there. I know that there's a lot of people interested in these subject matters. So thank you for being on the show. I will let you go, and I will keep you in my contacts list. And if I ever want to have a show with this subject matter again, I know who to email.
Listen, I would love to be your guest again. Thank you for your kindness.
You're very welcome. You have a good night and keep in touch. Consider following me on Facebook. I know we hooked up on Facebook, and you can look at my website at interfacedeath.net, same name as the YouTube channel, and we can compare notes, and hopefully we can research things together.
That'd be great. Thank you so much again.
You are welcome. You have a good evening.
You too.
All right, folks, there you have it. Joye Pugh, very interesting. I love somebody who digs into researching things and does it for a long period of time, because you look more credible. Okay, you go to school, you learn all the ins and outs of doing the research properly, and it all starts with some passion. And for Joy, it was a dream. It started with a dream, and she is still trying to understand that dream, and that fire that her dream sparked is still burning within her. So that is awesome to see. Check out her website. It's in the description of the video, and please consider buying one of her books. We try to promote and support everybody on this show, so please consider doing that. And we'd like to thank Joy again for coming on this show. You guys have been great every week. I'm going to go into my whole end of the show, spiel. So let's go to the social screen and talk about how you can keep this kind of content going. You know, the Necromancer show, the live vlog shows we do, the live investigations through Paranormal that we do. Everything we do is not possible without Patreon. Okay, guys? If you're interested in supporting what Interface Death does in all platforms and facets, you can go to patreon.com/support Interface Death and see what kind of rewards and incentives and exclusive content you can get for just $1 a month. Okay, guys, all this stuff we're doing, unfortunately, is very, very expensive. We do scientific research, just like Joy was, preaching and advocating. So if you would like to see that progress, you can chip in through Patreon. Follow the Necromancer live show on Facebook, and follow our paranormal research on Twitter and Instagram. The patrons are always shouted out on the show. We got Christy Brown, Scott Stewart, Clayman Borman, Jessica Bias, Matthew Jackson, RJ Murphy, Matt Benton, Liz Coy, and Bill Davis. Without their contributions, this content will not be possible. Okay, guys? Thank you very much. You are in my heart each and every week. I love you very much. We have a guest on Necromancer next week. I will let you know what his name is. It's Jarrett. It looks like Jarrett Osborne. Yes, Jarrett Osborne's on Necromancer next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll look forward to seeing you guys again. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you have not seen the show and all of our video promotions that we show at the end, stick around to see them. I'll leave it there. You guys have a good evening, and I bid you farewell.
Wow, everything just got